So what you need is actually a laser transfer. Now, this is actually the same one I used in the book, so it's a very, very old transfer, but it's fine. It'll work. Laser transfer, not inkjet, laser. You're going to need a tile, and you're going to need translucent clay. Now, I would advise that you take a fresh piece off of a block, that you don't grab that pile of translucent scrap you have and try to work that up, because we're going to be taking this clay and rolling it so thin that it's going to be very helpful not to have a lot of air pockets. And that's what would happen if I had taken up all these little bits of translucent and then mushed them together and rolled and rolled and rolled. And even though I may roll 1,000,000 times, okay, 100 times, okay, 20 times, it's probably still going to be a little air in there. And that could be problematic later. So start with a fresh piece. Now, I'm going to be conditioning this, of course. So let me take the boss and just start by flattening, like so. Okay, this clay feels really good. It does, it feels really good. Not too sticky, not too dry. It has a good feeling. Now I will roll it through the thickest setting of my pasta machine. First, I'm going to clean under the rollers. I just take something like this and I just run it back and forth. And this is, I must tell you, primarily the way I clean my machine. One of these days, I may get a fancy machine. Right now, I'm just using an Atlas 150. Okay. Phew. I'm a little bit of a slob. You guys, if you've been watching me, you guys know this. All right, so let's roll it through. Thickest setting. Ta-ta. Reset the machine, setting number 2. My Atlas starts at 0. Now I will fold and roll. Okay, I'm just folding and rolling. And the clay isn't going to crumble. It's kind of soft enough. But what I will not do is if it shreds and there are a bunch of little pieces lying around, I'm not going to try to use those. Not for this. It's the same thing I talked about before. Cut it off the block. We don't want any crumbles. Okay, so I'll be back. All right, so I would say I rolled this through about 20 times. And I'm going to bring this up because right there, can you see that little light spot? Well, I would like not to have those at all because I think those are very minute air bubbles. And what will happen is when you start to pull and stretch, they will probably at some point break. So I'm going to roll this through another 10 times or so, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back, and I can still see like one little white dot there. But another thing you can do, and this was taught to me by Lisa Pavelka, actually, when you have like minute air bubbles, if you pull and then fold and then put it through the pasta machine, of course, the fold on the rollers, then what happens is the stretching starts to help you break up any air bubbles in the clay. So roll, stretch, fold, roll. Okay, yeah, it's very smart. And it will help. So let me roll this through a few more times. It may seem fussy, but if I do a good job at this point, then I will have fewer problems later on. All right, so I rolled through and I stretched, and you know what? It's looking really good and it feels good. Now, if you reach this point and you feel that your clay is a little brittle, then add some conditioning bar or some softener because you want this clay to stretch. All right, you don't want to pull on it and have it break. You want it to slowly stretch out. So that means the clay should have a certain amount of flex to it. Should not be brittle and cold. All right, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to thin it out as thin as I can. All right, so I am on setting number 2. I'm going to go through like 5, then 7, then I'll work my way up to 9, which is the thinnest. I will be back. Okay, I'm back. I just rolled this through setting number 4. I thought, you know, I should probably show you. Now, this is clearly going to be more than I need because I'm going to put it on the tile, right? So I'm just going to cut some of it off because it gets a little difficult to handle. And if I'm careful with that, then I will do the same thing with that piece. All right, so now, oops. Oopsie. Okay, now let's go to setting number 5. Okay, so one thing, when you are rolling very thin clay through your pasta machine, if you start having problems with shearing, like the rollers of your machine are starting to grab it and it's starting to tear and you can't roll it through, my suggestion to you is as you are rolling it through the machine, let the rollers grab the edge, but do not let this just drop. Maintain some tension. Maintain some pull above the rollers, and I think that you'll have a much better experience. So let me do that. Now I'm setting number 6. Okay, and I actually do kind of pull the clay as it's going through. Once again, this is more clay than I need. Let me set it to number 8. There's number 8, quite thin, nice and thin. And then finally, I will go through setting number 9. Wish me luck. The hard part is not getting it through the machine. The hard part is that, you know, you have to be able to hold on to it. And then as it's going through, then you have to grab it from underneath the rollers. Okay. All right, so not perfect because I kind of lost control over one corner and it kind of flopped back on itself. But at this point, now I will take and just gently stretch it out. So I'm going to make it quite a bit thinner. Even then setting 9. Okay. But the clay has a really nice feel at this point. I'm able to pull and stretch it out, and it is actually stretching with me. Okay. All right, so I think that's about as much as I can do at this point. So next comes, this is the next challenge, okay? And that next challenge is getting it down onto the tile. So you should have a clean tile. Not so easy in my studio. My tiles tend to be pretty beat up. And now you're just going to slowly work across so that you don't capture any air between this very, very thin translucent clay. And you can see I'm holding it up with my right hand and then securing with my left. See a little, I think, air bubbles right there. So I'll have to pierce those, I think, because this clay is so thin, I can't just lift it off and try to expel the air. I'm feeling some kind of little gritty piece of something. I can't see it, but I can feel it. Okay. Just take your time. As you work from one side to the other. Okay, I can see the air bubble there. I'm not too concerned about the perimeter. I will be using mostly the clay in the center. So let me just get rid of some of this along the perimeter. Like so. There's a bad spot, there's a hole, so I'm just going to cut it right there. Okay. All right, now I'm going to take this little needle, and wherever I see an air bubble, I'm just piercing it and pushing the air out. Okay, and if you look at it from an angle, you can better see the little air pockets. Okay, and you can see I'm sort of just brushing my fingertips against the clay, and because the clay is so thin, that seems to be enough to move the air out. Now, it probably isn't going to be perfect, but it will be as perfect as I can make it. All right, so I will continue. I have a bunch of them here. I'm not going to make you watch me. I will be back. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Maybe it's not perfect. I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to take this guy, face down on the translucent clay. let's burnish a bit. Just a little burnishing. Let me cut the excess away because there's like more than I need. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it with water. Okay, so I have a spray bottle. Now, one of the things that happens to me sometimes is if there's too much water on the paper, the water kind of gets underneath the paper itself, and then it just pulls the whole thing off. So I use a spray bottle and just lightly to get most of the paper off initially. And then as I get closer to the ink, I rub lighter. Okay, initially I can rub pretty firmly against the paper. Now, if you don't have a spray bottle, no problem. Just put water in a little dish and you can just dip your finger in like so. I mean, not a big deal, right? And just keep pushing down so that that water doesn't get underneath the paper and the ink. I mean, that's what happens to me. So now I'm ready to tint the piece. And I'm going to be using pan pastels. But you know, you can use perfect pearls, you can use, there are so many things you could tint this with. Okay, I just happen to have these handy, and so I'm going to use them. Let's take a brush. I'm going to make the base of the feathers dark, and then shade out to the tips. Okay. Okay, so I applied the powder on. You know, that powder is like a resist, so I'm just going to dust the excess off. So now I'm going to take my gold leaf. Oops. Stuff is falling. Okay, and I bought this, I don't remember where, but this is 24 karat or 23 karat gold. It's not regular leaf. It's actually pounded metal. So I bought it a long time ago. I don't think it was all that expensive. I suspect now it would be. So what I'm going to do is take this, and you can see it's got the little gold flecks. It's because, well, I took like this, scraps of this, and I threw it in black, and that's what I have. Not a big deal. So I'm going to roll this through 3. That's pretty good. It's not terribly thick. It's not terribly thin. And I'm going to take one piece. Thing is, you want to make sure when you're, see, ooh, look at that. Okay. Don't curl on me, as it will curl back on itself. So let me just do this. That corner folded up just a little bit, but it's not bad. Now, where did that come from? Little bits of paper. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to thin this out, so I've rolled it through setting 3. I'm going to reset and roll it through 4. Okay. And I'm going to reset it and roll it through 5, only this time I will put this edge on the rollers and roll this way. The one thing about 23, 24 karat gold as opposed to leaf, like metal leaf, it seems to me that it crackles a little finer. The crackle pattern is very fine. Okay, so now I'm just going to take the gold side and put it down. Onto the transfer. And those little cracks, even though they're tiny, those tiny cracks will help the black and gold sheet stick to the powder. Now, it may want to come off. It could. Come on, you. Just gonna cut some of this off. All right, so let's cut this off. Just pushing it down. Okay, now I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I found this. This is just, you know, the stuff you put on your shelves, shelf liner. And I like it because it will help me a bit and keep this tile from slipping around. Because this is one of those situations where I wish I had like 4 hands, okay? Because I've got to take this blade and hold it against that tile and cut underneath that translucent clay, right? So I do not want this tile to be slipping all over when I'm trying to cut. And this shelf stuff is just great. It is great. Okay, come on. You can do it. Maybe you can do it. Maybe this is going to be a great big old failure. Okay, let's see what we've got. Okay, so some of it didn't turn out so well. some of it is okay. But for instance, that, so I'm finding that I may have to do a little healing. Just a little healing. Just a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and just try. And you know what? I think it will help if I have this. Actually, better. And I must admit, this wasn't my best one. I've done some that were much better than this. I think it's going to be okay, though. Because as I said, I'm not really looking for a specific pattern. I don't want this whole thing to be just absolutely perfect. That's not bad. Not bad. I do want it to be smooth, though. Now, when you do this, if you have to do this, as I have had to, when you peel up the paper, make sure that you peel it like this, slowly. And see how I'm holding this edge very low? Because if I pull straight up, I might make it a lot worse. Okay. Well, that is actually not bad at all, I don't think. So I am going to take some scrap clay and make a base bead, and then I will be back.